John, we appreciate you being on, and how you doing this morning?
I'm doing okay, Will. How are you guys?
Well, we're fine. We appreciate you very much. Our show is in Tuscaloosa, and mostly a football show, but we do talk a little basketball. I'd like to ask you maybe why Tennessee has struggled so much in the first half and come back so well in the second half, and they won them all but one. People down here, John, they forget that Tennessee beat Alabama 9 or 10 times in a row, and they're overconfident, I think. But what's going on with their team thus far?
Well, it's pretty inexplicable, actually, Wimp. I mean, why is something? Last year, Tennessee got ahead. They came out, got ahead on Oklahoma 17 points. They were up on Florida by 13 with 6.5 minutes to go. It's just a flip-flop, and it's really impossible to explain. It's just one of these things that happen. I will say this, though. Joshua Dobbs, Tennessee's quarterback, when things go badly and they get behind, he just plays better. Maybe he doesn't think as much, but he's a great playmaker. He's a great runner. He's the best runner on this team. And he just starts making plays when they get down. He's a very bright guy, and I wonder sometimes he's maybe too analytical. But when you get down 14 to 17 points, there's not a whole lot you can do but run it or throw it. And he seems to play his best in that situation, and I think everybody else kind of follows his lead. But the team has a great attitude when down. It's as though they almost expect to win once they get down.
That's good points. It does. Barry?
John, tell everybody about the injuries Tennessee is coming off of. I don't know if they had some prior to the Texas A&M game. It seemed like they had a lot during that game. I started thinking, man, they ain't going to have enough to play next week. How injured is this Tennessee football team?
Well, it's hard to say because Coach Bush Jones said after Saturday's game he's still talking about injuries. So I'm not exactly sure who's hurt, how badly they're hurt, but they went into the A&M game without linebackers Darren Kirkland and Jalen Reeves-Maben. Kirkland has a high ankle sprain. Reeves-Maben has his shoulder. Whether they'll be back for Alabama, I don't know. Kirkland would be the greater possibility. I'm not sure Reeves-Maben will play again. Apparently, surgery is one of the options. He's got to be looking ahead to the NFL. He's not a high-round draft pick, but I think he could play in the NFL. Cam Sutton, the cornerback, he had a broken ankle. He might be out for the year. I'm not sure. There's talk that he might come back late, but he won't play against Alabama. Then Danny O'Brien, who was hurt against Texas A&M, he's a tackle starter. He's been dismissed from the team for a rules violation. He was suspended last year, same reason. So it had nothing to do with the injury. Let's see, Jalen Hurd, starting running back. I think he has a concussion, and he probably, I don't know if he'll be ready to play either. He didn't play against Texas A&M. They also had a couple other guys, like a linebacker. Let's see. It's hard to keep up with all these. I apologize.
I guess that's my point. There's so many guys.
I know, it just goes on and on. But here's what's so odd about it. I mean, they get these guys. They had two offensive linemen. I should mention that. Two starting offensive linemen hurt against A&M. Dylan Weissman, the center, maybe their best offensive lineman. Deshaun Robertson, guard. Those guys went out. But here's the uncanny thing about it. It doesn't seem to matter who they put in there. They just keep playing and keep cutting into that lead. I mean, they're down 28-7 at one point to A&M, and they're losing players. I mean, you think this would be a blowout. Instead, they just come on like gangbusters. It's one of the weirdest teams I've seen, and I've been in this a long time. I've never seen a team play with so much resolve once it gets behind. I mean, it just refuses to quit, and it has a sense that it's going to win the game even when the odds are stacked heavily against it.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be a hard answer, that first question I asked, because there is no answer.
Lord, good Lord, that's the whole roster he just named.
I know.
Was hurt.
I know, but see what happened. Hurd can't play, so what do? They turn it over to Alvin Kamara. He signed with Alabama originally. He was on the team for a year, then went to JUCO route. And he had a better game than Jalen Hurd ever had.
Yeah, he did. He ran hard. Man, he looked good. He had a lot of Alabama people saying, man, we shouldn't have let him go after they watched him.
Yeah, those Alabama fans are greedy, aren't they?
They are greedy.
You know, but the thing about Kamara, he's so good. Kamara's so good in the open field. He had, I think, 168 yards receiving, 121 rushing. And then John Kelly, the third running back, he played very little. He comes in there, and every carry, he's running like Nick Chubb, like he just refuses to go down. So it's hard to make any sense of it, but I think Tennessee is a dangerous team, and if you come in overconfident against them, particularly once you get a lead, you got a problem. Because if you look at this game and match up statistics and what Alabama's done, what Tennessee's done, you think this should be a 3-4 touchdown game. But the odds makers, I think the initial line was, 9 or 10. Is that tells you something right there. And if you go back and look at Tennessee's games, all its SEC games, the opening line has been right on the money. 10 against Florida, it was a 10-point game. 3.5 against Georgia, it was a 3-point game. 7 against A&M favored. A&M won by 7. They've been right on the money. So combine that with Tennessee's resilience, and you think it'll be a close game, even though Alabama on paper looks way better.
Tennessee with so many emotional games. I mean, if I'm a fan, I got to be drained. The players got to be drained. They got all these injuries now. I think Tennessee's got a chance to be flat this weekend. I know that sounds crazy. An Alabama-Tennessee game. Alabama's won 9 straight games. Tennessee flat, no way. Am I off base there?
Well, no. I mean, that's logical, but this is an illogical team.
Yeah.
Back to my earlier point, I mean, the worse things get, the better Tennessee plays. I mean, really, they could have been flat against A&M because they've had 2 dramatic games against Florida and then Georgia, and they'd lost players along the way. I mean, you could certainly, that's a very viable theory to think that. I mean, this team has finally run out of gas, but I thought it was done at Texas A&M when it was 28-7. Florida and Georgia, I thought they were coming back. A&M, I thought they were done, and they came back. So, I just don't know that. I mean, that's a viable theory, as I said, but the way this team plays, it's hard to envision it just collapsing. Maybe it will. Maybe all this will catch up with it Saturday against Alabama, which is certainly the number
John,
one.
By accident, this schedule of Tennessee's is front loaded. Nobody knew that, but when you've got South Carolina, Missouri, Kentucky, and Vandy as your last 4, I think Tennessee's playing for more against Alabama. They're also playing for the Eastern Division, and I think that's important. And so it's quite unusual to see it fall the way it fell. Now I don't know if they're going to beat all those 4 teams, but certainly they'll be favored in those 4 games.
Yeah, and you look at that, Limp, and you wonder, though, if maybe it's just been so pumped and it goes through all these games and does well. I think 2-2 would, that would be okay, but then maybe it'll falter against one of those other teams. I don't know, but if the schedule is certainly set up, I mean, I think the bottom half of the East is really down.
Yeah.
And I think even not playing your best, Tennessee should, as long as Dobbs stays healthy.
Yeah, I agree. One other thing I wanted to ask you, I'll let Barry ask something. Do you think he's got the program in pretty good shape recruiting wise? I mean, on sound, I know he's worked very hard, and I got a lot of friends up there. Does he have the program to where he pretty close to wanting it recruiting wise?
Wimp, I'm sorry. I had to cough, and I didn't hear the first part.
Okay, that's all right. Do they have the program about where in the recruiting part of it? Is the program, I guess, more stable now and making a move forward?
Yeah, there was so much instability there for quite a while.
Yeah.
Going back to Fulmer's last year, Philip Fulmer, and then Lane Kiffin and Derek Dooley. Butch Jones has recruited consistently well.
Good.
And I think even though Tennessee will lose a number of key players this year, I think it very easily could be the favorite in the East, regardless of what happens down the stretch. It could very easily be the favorite in the East next year. They've had a number of good recruiting classes in a row.
Great, Barry.
We're talking with John Adams with the Knoxville News Sentinel. John, I know Tennessee is looking really hard at what's going to happen with this Florida LSU game. Can you see any scenario where Greg Sankey can't find a way to get this game played? It looks bad to me the way the LSU AD's digging in. I know Tennessee's keeping a close eye on that thing. I just wanted to get your opinion on how this thing was handled and what you think will happen.
Well, I know Mike Flywood got it played.
No doubt.
And he wouldn't have made a big deal in public about it. I think he would have made saying, hey, we'll get together and we'll collaborate and we'll work this thing out. But when they got together, he would have started out by saying this game will be played. And now let's decide how we want to do it. But that, I think, would have been without question. I think something should have been done even in days leading up to the game about scenarios. It should have been worked out then and made it clear to both schools that, hey, this game has to be played, and we can work on how we do it. If you guys can't come to agreement, then I'll do it. That's, to me, the way you do it. It's an integrity issue with the league. You can't just have a game of this magnitude, which affects both division races. You can't just toss it out, regardless of how we got to this stage. That's irrelevant at this point. You have to work it out, and that's the commissioner's job, or he's going to take a real hit on this. If Tennessee would win out and Florida would win out and Florida wouldn't play LSU and Florida's in the SEC East Championship game as the East representative, the conference would take a lot of hits on this. I don't think Florida can win out anyway, but that's not the point. It's an integrity issue with the conference.
No doubt that.
Well, I just wanted to mention Rick Barnes worked with me for a year, and I got a lot of great friends up there, and hopefully the basketball program is. I think it's struggling some as well. Any comment on that at all?
Well, Wimp, there's no Kevin Durant on the roster.
Yeah. Right.
No LaMarcus Aldridge. So I know the league is not as strong as it was in your heyday in the 80s when it was a really great basketball conference. So
yeah.
It's not as though you necessarily can get buried with mediocre talent, because there are a lot of other programs with mediocre talent.
You know it. But, that's right.
So maybe a couple, not that way, but when you were back in the 80s, there weren't any easy games. And I just don't, I don't look at this roster and see, a team, it looks to me like a, 15-15 type team, which is what Tennessee's been. I don't see it being any better, but who knows, maybe one of these players will surprise us. But right now, no, I don't see where Rick's been able to recruit any really named players.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Barry?
Is there any talk about who the new AD is going to be? What is the process? I think you guys were they were at the University of Tennessee, was the process maybe hiring a chancellor first. When is Dave Hart's last day there? And is there any talk about who may replace him?
Well, technically, he's supposed to go through next spring. I don't see any way that's happening. They need to get this thing resolved soon. For one thing, you don't want a football coach coming off a great season, which this still could be, and, maybe some other schools making a run at him, dealing with contracts. You want him to know who his AD is going to be. So I think it's important to get that resolved. Even if they can't decide on the chancellor, whom I think should be Brian Nolan of ETSU. I'm not sure he wants the job, but he was in line. He was in the running for the presidency job and lost out, I think, in a real close decision to Joe DiPietro, who's now the president, and would be technically his boss if he came here as chancellor. But I know him there. Then there's an obvious candidate, his athletic director, David Blackburn, is the AD at UT Chattanooga. He's familiar with the Tennessee system. He's a Tennessee guy, a native of Tennessee. He worked in just about every capacity in the world at the University of Tennessee in the athletic department, compliance, you name it, from the time he was like a graduate student, I guess. So the people he knows, he's had a working relationship with Philip Fulmer, Dooley, Kiffin, even Butch Jones for a few months. All the people on the board should know him. I would have just gone ahead and hired the guy and then worried about the chance because I think he's a really solid candidate, and he's done well at UT Chattanooga. He's made a couple of good hires in basketball, men's and women. So, maybe he's just too logical a choice, and they want to go out and take a chance on somebody else. Because when you're an administrator and everybody says, pick this guy, and if you pick the guy, then, well, it's like you don't get any credit. Everybody knew you pick him.
Yeah.
Whereas then if you go out and find somebody that nobody's heard of or unfamiliar with, then you get credit if he does well. But beware of that scenario, because if it doesn't work out, and this guy was right there, I just think it's a no-brainer to hire David Blackburn. I think one of the best things he did was he was involved in the compliance when Lane Kiffin was the head football coach in 2009, that season. And I think Tennessee really dodged the bullet in terms of the NCAA investigation. They didn't get severe penalties or anything. But there was a lot of stuff going on at that time, and I think David Blackburn took the lead on it and sort of negotiated his way through that course. And I think he deserves some of the credit for that, for Tennessee not getting in big trouble with the NCAA.
Well, that's very interesting down here. I certainly want to thank you. You've been a friend for a long time, and you didn't have to do this, and I appreciate it. And hopefully one of these days we'll get to see each other again.
Okay, great. Hey, thanks for calling, guys.